So welcome to our next session, the B2B SaaS journey to usage billing, the Mailgun story. Here at MGI, we often get pulled into helping companies with their monetization journey. And in the course of our engagements with clients, many of the challenges often have consistent themes: keeping pace with growth, struggles with internationalization, integrating acquisitions, complicated usage and tax scenarios. All of these are very common and typical kind of challenges that organizations face. And often in the very first conversation that we'll have with a client, a senior executive will say, we have a very simple business, we're just not that complicated. And usually that's the indicator that the business is anything but simple. And so joining me in our next case study interview is Josh Odom, the CTO of Mailgun. And he's going to share with us the Mailgun monetization experience and the lessons that he's learned and they've learned so far. And the spoiler alert is, don't be fooled. This business is anything but simple and uncomplicated. So with that, welcome, Josh.
Hey, Andrew, great to be with you today.
So just give us a little background on Mailgun. What do you guys do? Kind of what's the scope and size of your business?
Certainly, happy to. So Mailgun was founded in 2010. We're a Y Combinator-backed startup originally. It was founded by two individuals who, in the early days of cloud computing, realized that there was a need to be able to send email in a reliable way from cloud infrastructure, both sending and receiving. So that was the genesis of Mailgun back in 2010. And of course, the strategy and the business model has evolved over time, but core to our focus as a business is enabling developers and partners to be able to send email messages through a reliable and robust API. Many people think email is very much a solved problem, but when you are running at a scale where you need to send millions or hundreds of millions of messages at once, Mailgun is the right solution for you. We work with customers like Lyft, where we're responsible for sending all of their email messages through our platform so that they're delivered in a timely and reliable way to the end users.
Cool. So help us understand and learn more about kind of the Mailgun monetization journey. You guys have been on a good growth trajectory, expanding the business also from a geographic point of view. When did that growth and some of the complexity that comes with the expansion kind of begin to affect your ability to monetize?
It's a great question. So early on in Mailgun, we relied on a pretty simple subscription billing model, which is what most SaaS companies or many SaaS companies start out with. Based on usage, the number of email messages that were being sent or processed, you would subscribe to a plan that best suit your needs with right set of features. We've experimented with a number of different billing models as time has gone on, including as we have gone more upmarket. The subscription model is effective for many customers, but for customers that have highly specific needs that want a level of customization, that was really kind of the first point at which our simple billing model, simple billing system was no longer sufficient. So that was kind of the first point where we had to evolve as a business. The second big point has been the acquisition of a company based in Paris, France called Mailjet, where the complexities there were really around multiple currencies, VAT, taxation, and all of the accounting complexity that goes into having a business that is operating internationally from an accounting and finance perspective. Both have introduced a level of complexity into the business where our original decisions of building our own billing engine, rating engine just were no longer scalable. we were in a situation I think many companies are faced with, where they are needing to spend a considerable amount of their time building billing logic, as opposed to focus on building a great product experience for the customers, which is what led us in early 2018 to implement Chargeify, to replace our own homegrown billing system for the Mailgun business, and where we've recently migrated our Mailjet subsidiary onto the Chargeify platform for contract billing as well.
So you mentioned that you offer usage and consumption-based models, so people can pay as they go. They can also do prepay, pay in advance, and also do enterprise deals. What kind of unique challenges has that wide array of offers kind of introduced from a monetization perspective, and how did you handle it? In addition to just implementing new billing with Chargeify, what else did you guys have to do to try to kind of tame the complexity that comes with all of that?
It's a great question. I think for us, this is really about meeting the customer where they are first and foremost. So what we learned is that many of our developers who are just getting started, maybe they're building, a hobbyist app, doing something for themselves to learn about software development. They don't actually want a subscription billing model. They want a model where they can use the service, get to understand the service, and if their application grows into something more meaningful, then they're very willing to pay. So on the low end, we have the hobbyist developers, and maybe these are developers who are working for larger companies in their day jobs. So they value having a free tier where they get a certain allocation of usage, and there's no obligation to pay for that. And as you grow up and scale on the platform, customers value a certain level of predictability in their costs. And when that predictability comes, features that we can bundle at certain price points to help encourage users to subscribe to higher value offers as they continue to grow on the platform. And last but not least is the contract model. And the contract model has every possible permutation of complexity there is in the billing universe. We have customers who have very, very seasonal usage patterns. For example, we work with many finance companies that have a spike of usage around tax season, where they don't want to actually subscribe monthly to their high watermark. They want to be able to pay for an annual allocation of emails and use that allocation throughout the year based on their business needs. So each of these has a very different level of customer engagement, problem set associated with it. And the desire here was not actually to complicate our billing model. The real issue here was making sure that we were meeting customers where they were, where we could serve customers who were just getting started, who are sending maybe 1,000 messages a month or less, all the way to customers who are sending 1 billion or more messages a month. We cater to both of those customer types on our platform. And the pain and complexity of managing the different billing rules, billing models, and having developers spend all of their time tweaking and tuning these billing models was just becoming untenable for the business.
And how do you, with a usage and consumption-based model, how do you manage the challenge of trying to predict and forecast your own business when it's based off of acquiring customers and then their consumption of the product, which you have no control over?
That's right.
How do you handle that?
Well, that is a problem that we're constantly working through each and every month, because even in a subscription world, so much of our revenue comes by way of overages. So we do look at usage models to predict where customers are going to be, but really it's not until the end of the month or the very end of the month, sometimes the last 2 or 3 days of the month, where overages are being incurred by customers, where we really can get a more precise understanding of where we're going to be from a revenue perspective. So we have several layers of modeling that we build on top of our usage system, the data that we're getting back from our billing system, our accounting systems, to be able to better predict. But it is an interesting problem for us as a business, and one that we're constantly working to refine as we continue to grow and scale.
We were talking earlier, and you'd mentioned that you guys have built this, what you call the billing service layer. What can you describe that? What exactly is that?
Absolutely. So with the acquisition of Mailjet, we've been living in this universe where we have our core billing system built on Chargeify, and where we have the Mailjet custom billing system that we've been working to retire over the last several months. Billing actually touches many different facets of our business. So we wanted a common mechanism for our dashboard and our management systems to be able to interact with the billing system, regardless of where that data lived. So we built a very lightweight service layer that allows things like our dashboard to be able to communicate with Chargeify and know where to go pull invoices, how to update credit cards, how to update other billing information without really focusing or caring about what is underneath the hood, so to speak. So this has given us the ability for our data warehouse, as an example, to be able to pull invoice records, usage records. This is also how we set things for our SMS product set, where there is a different price point for each country you're sending a message to, as an example. We have a bunch of different inputs and outputs to all of these systems, but we wanted a very common way to manage the billing concerns across the entire facet of the business, both here in the US and internationally as well. So we built this service layer that allows us to have a common way of interacting with all of those different concerns.
Got it. And presumably that also helps with revenue recognition.
That's right. That's right. So beneath all of this, we use NetSuite. So we have several different layers of transformation that happen in our data warehouse and our other integration layers that take everything that exists in our billing system, feeds them into NetSuite so that we're able to do revenue recognition properly. And this is also the system that feeds all of our downstream systems for our finance organization as well.
So growth business went from homegrown to off the shelf, put in a service layer, international acquisition, continue to expand geographically. If you could look back, what would you do differently? Like, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Wow, quite a few things. I think first and foremost, I wish we would have started this journey earlier. When we first implemented a billing system, you don't realize the level of complexity and how entangled all of the different business systems are. And these transitions just take time. One of the things that I do think that would have helped us would have been to do more of a phased approach. When we first migrated to a billing system, we tried to do everything all at once, kind of in one cutover. While that sounds nice, all of the different reporting challenges, there's always things that you're going to find when you do a system migration like this that no amount of UAT or testing is really going to uncover. It requires you to kind of just work through cohort by cohort by cohort of customers. And when you're running a project like this, there's always a bunch of other business objectives or business goals that are competing for the same time, attention, and resources. We were doing a complete repricing of our entire offer while we were doing this integration, which was yet another complication. So, looking back, I would say thinking about how to do this in a more phased approach would have certainly been more helpful in terms of streamlining the migration. It was successful, but being able to break this down into more of a discrete cohort would certainly have been more helpful and streamlining the process as we went along.
Talk to us about kind of what's on your roadmap going forward. What are the things you're working on right now? How far do you think you can extend it? Are you going to continue to come up with new pricing models, new plans?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we're doing early next year is for our Mailjet brand, a new pricing and packaging exercise, where we'll be building a new set of subscription offers. So that's going to introduce its own set of challenges, a new pricing model for that particular group of customers. One of the aspects of our business that's been growing rapidly has been our SMS product set as well. And we're going to be expanding that product into the US market through our Mailgun brand. And as I mentioned earlier, SMS is just a really, really unique product because each and every message that you send has a different price point, whether it's a US bound message or a Canadian backed message. And it's not just the rating of the usage that's complicated. In SMS, it's very common to have a credit-based option. So customers will be prepaying for SMS credits that are drawn down effectively as usage is incurred on the product, which is a completely different billing model than we currently have on the Mailgun product today. So for us, this just gets more and more complicated as our product set grows and as we really endeavor to meet customers where they are.
I want to go back to one thing you mentioned earlier, which is the fact that you're making some amount of your money off of overages. And as a consumer, right, as a mobile phone consumer, overages are often an unpleasant surprise.
That's right.
How do you kind of balance the revenue and profitability that comes from that on one hand, and the friction that's inherent from the customer's point of view with that model?
Sure, it's a great question. I think there's a lot of businesses out there where there are overages that are designed to be highly punitive. That's certainly not our model. We've designed overages in a way that allows customers to, first of all, know when they're approaching the threshold. We allow plan upgrades mid-cycle, so you can upgrade as soon as you start to incur overages, and you won't be faced with any punitive fees. So that you can basically optimize your plan based on your usage at any time during the period, so that you're not stuck or surprised by a large bill at the end of the cycle. But because of the usage model, many customers actually, we find, do value having overages so that they don't have to subscribe into a higher tier if they have a highly seasonal business. So I think the key to this is just making sure that customers know where they are mid-cycle, have the opportunity to upgrade. And we have several support tiers and customer success tiers that are proactively reaching out to customers to let them know you're approaching your allocation. Here's what we can offer you in terms of planned upgrades to make sure that the customer is in the right fit for them at the right time.
Right, and that's that connection between customer support, account management, and billing.
That's right.
Right, yeah. Do you expect it? So another thing you mentioned is the cohort analysis. And we see that in our practice, which is organizations often kind of on the surface think, well, all our customers are relatively alike. But in reality, there's a lot of snowflakes out there, which is, from a distance, they look similar, but upon close inspection, they're completely unique. They are unique. In terms of the agreement that you have with them and the services that are provided and how they pay, et cetera. how much work did you guys put into the cohort analysis? And in your original planning, did you expect to do that much analysis on cohorts, or did that come later?
It's a great question. There's really two different lenses to look at this. One is the customers who are on subscriptions, maybe paying between $35 a month and $1,000 a month, which we have plans that really kind of cater to those use cases. When you're looking at those cohorts, there's very well-defined kind of lanes that customers tend to operate in. So we've been able to design our plans and packages for those use cases. But once you cross that $1,000 a month spectrum, every single customer looks like a snowflake. In fact, the hundreds of customers we have on annual or enterprise agreements all have their own very unique package and plan that we build in the sales process. So everybody past a certain point starts to look more like a snowflake, even though there might be some commonality in usage, number of email messages. People start to value different service tiers, different SLAs, different features that are bundled. All of those variables makes it so that each customer starts to look very unique in their own plan design.
And how do you balance internally? Presumably you guys try to reduce the amount of complexity in your business as much as possible. And yet when you're out selling, you want to meet, as you say, you want to meet the customer where the customer is. And from a sales point of view, that usually means creating whatever unique offer is necessary to meet that customer.
Right.
How do you try to balance the desire of the sales organization to meet their numbers and meet the customer, and the operational and financial need to minimize complexity?
Yeah, so early on, we did try to create very well-defined packages that fit kind of the core features and bundles that our sales team was out selling in the market. Inevitably, the word one-off comes to mind. There's always a one-off. There's always a special customer. So we reached a point where we were going through this process, weekly at least, and we just decided that we were going to embrace the complexity and make it so that it was not operationally tedious on the business. So we created processes where from Salesforce, we could easily implement the right pricing and packaging models so that all of these bespoke packages that we were out selling and proposing to customers could easily be created in an automated way in our own internal systems, so that there was a very, very low operational cost to supporting this. And I think as companies grow and the complexity of the offers continue to increase, that this is just something that every company, kind of depending on where they are in this evolution, has to decide to embrace at a certain point to enable the sales team to build and curate the right package for the end user. I think from the customer's perspective, it can be a red flag if the sales team doesn't have the flexibility to create the right curated offer at the end of the day. So we just reached a point where we said, okay, for us to continue to grow as a business, we just have to embrace the complexity and make it easy operationally to go implement, which is what we did.
Terrific. Well, Josh, thanks very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And I know your details are up in the networking section, so if anybody wants to reach out, you guys are hiring, I know.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure he'd be happy to join folks at the networking section later today. So with that, Josh Odom, Mailgun, thanks very much. And thanks everyone for joining us here.
Thank you.